Hi guys, in this video we will be looking at what are variables in Python, how to assign a value to a variable, how to write good variables, and how to fix the commonest mistake you are likely to have when starting to practice how to write variables in Python. So let's get started. Okay, before we start learning what variables are in Python and how to use it, first of all let us create a directory where to save our files. So remember, directory is also called folders. Since I'm on Linux, I will just simply come here where I have files. So I click on this and my Linux Explorer just open here. So I will just right click here and come to where I have create new folder. If you're on Windows, just right click, you see new folder. So my folder has just been created, but it doesn't have any name. You can call my folder learning Python. We are going to save our files inside this folder. I have already installed Visual Studio Code, so if you're on Linux, then if you are confused about how you can install Visual Studio Code on Linux, just check out my other videos in the same playlist. You'll see exactly how to install Visual Studio Code both on Linux and on Windows. I have Visual Studio Code installed on my machine. I right click on the Visual Studio Code, then you are going to see a place called new empty window. You click on that one for it to open a brand new window. Of course, my new empty window has just opened and this is what I have on the screen. Now this is the welcome message. Anytime you open the Visual Studio Code, you always have this. So just go ahead and exit this. Now come to where you have these files. Here we want to select that folder that we created. As I click on the file, you can see come to where you have open folder. So we want to open that folder that we just created. So I click on that. Now I want to select the folder that I just created because this is where I want to save all my files. So I click on learning Python, the directory that I just created, and I click on OK. So you can see from here Visual Studio Code is asking me whether I trust the folder. Yes, I can hit on I trust the folder. I trust the author of the folder. So we want to save a file inside this learning folder. So in order for us to do that, move your mouse to where you have this new file, click on that, and since we want to start learning what variables are, I think it's convenient we call this our file variables, like this variables.py. The .py is very important because without the .py, your code editor is not it will not be able to process the code that we are going to write here as a Python code. So we are writing it down. A variable is a well-defined name which hold a value for future use in a Python code. So what do I mean by this? For example, if I write this, then I processed. Now if I hit on Ctrl plus A5 after Ctrl A is to save the work, as you can see here, I have what is your name printed out in the output in the terminal. But what if I want to reuse this what is your name? There is no way right now that I can reuse this what is your name, and maybe in future codes I want to come down here. That simply means I need to come down again and write what is your name again, which that can be very, very redundant, repeating a lot of codes in one file. So having variables is a kind of way that I can store this value inside the variable, and anytime I want to go back again to that value, I can immediately just give the name of the variable and the value will just come out. Like, take a variable to be a kind of container or a kind of box like container that a value can be stored inside the container, and whenever you need that value inside that container, you just simply drag out the name of the container out, and you know that you have access to the value inside. So let us look at the example of a variable. So in this case, I can decide to give my variable something like this. Since I'm requesting for someone name, I can call my variable name. So calling my variable name, I can immediately give it a value of what is your name, like this. Okay, let's comment this one out. forget about what comment is at the moment. Comment is just a way of telling Python to ignore some lines of code in your code editor, but we are going to look at different ways of making writing a good comment. But at the moment, if you want to write a comment, or if you want to comment a line of code out, you can go ahead and put an hash sign at the beginning of your code. Automatically your Python will just simply ignore the line of that code. So here I define a variable called name, and it holds a value called what is your name. So instead of me to just go ahead and print the value directly to the output, I can just use the print. And remember that print function is just a way of telling Python give me the result in the terminal. So whenever we use print, we are going to see the result in the terminal. So I can just go ahead and call this variable, like I can go ahead and call this variable name inside this my print function, like this name, and Python going to automatically produce this value, because this value is automatically stored inside this our variable called name. So we hit on Ctrl S to save our work, and Ctrl plus A5 to see the result in the output, and that's the reason you can see what is your name. So another thing here now is, how do you assign a value to a variable? One of the ways you can assign a value to a variable is by using equality sign like this. When I say using equality sign, don't do mistake of using double equality sign, because that will be comparing this value to this variable here, and which is something we are going to look at different methods of comparing two values in the series, but not now. Whenever you write something of this nature, that simply means that what is on the right hand side of your code is being assigned to the left hand side of your code. Okay, so let's see again how to assign another variable called number. And let's say we assign a number called, let's say, like 1000, because you can assign anything to a variable. Okay, this is 10,000 right now. So we just define a variable called number, and in order for us to assign this 1000 to this number, we use equality sign here, and Python now understand that, oh, that whenever we wants to access this value, whenever it wants to get to this value, we need to give back again the name of this our variable. In our case is number here, and immediately we give it out, Python will be able to access the value that is assigned to it here. I hope that makes sense, but if you are still confused, I really encourage you to go down in the comment section, drop your question and where you don't understand, and do my best to answer that. So from here you can immediately just use the print function if you want to see the value again, and call number, which is the variable name. Hit on Ctrl S. I think you just comment this one out. Ctrl S, Ctrl plus A5, and that's the reason you can see the 10,000 being the value. So there's something I also observe here. Many times your result would kind of tends to fill the screen, the terminal. So whenever you want to have a clean screen again, one of the ways you can do that is, as your cursor is on this terminal, you can right click like this and use clear. Once you click on clear, it's going to clean up everything here on the screen. Now if you don't want to use clear, you can immediately just type clear yourself, and automatically your screen will just be cleared up. Let us look at some examples again. So this time around, let's say we have something like this, and we say number 1. Okay, so we call this variable number 1, and let's say we want to add two different numbers, and we have num2. Okay, so num2, let's say num2 is 300, and result, so we are just defining different variables right now. So result here, we want to say num1. Okay, num1 plus num2. Okay, so what are we doing here? If you noticed, we defined a variable name called num1. We assigned a value called 100, then define another variable name num2, then we also assigned another value 300 to it. So we define another variable. This time around, we want this variable to its value to do some mathematical calculation, and the result should be stored in this our variable called result. So what we are doing here is we pick the num1 here, and we pick the num2, then we use the addition sign. Now we add two of them. So there's something I want you to notice here, which I don't want you to be confused. That's the reason I popped this example up. So the thing here is, you may be mistaken that, oh, are we adding this num1 variable and this num2 variable? No, that's not what we are adding. we are simply using this additional sign, and what we are telling Python to do here is find the value of this num1 and also find the value of this num2 and add them together. So now if we print the result like this, if we call result the variable result, remember we assign a variable called result, so that whatsoever is going to be the result, the outcome of after adding here is going to be assigned to this result. So if you call result here, we hit on Control A to save our work, Control plus A5, you see we have 400. So suppose in Python was adding variable called num1 and num2, we would have not have. Instead, variables is just a carriers, like they are holding the values 100 and 300. So in this case, Python looks for this 100, the value that this num1 is carrying, and also look for the value that num2 is carrying, which is 300 in this case, and add them together and push back the result to exactly what we want it to be. So you can just go ahead and play with this thing with some of the mathematical operators that you know, multiplication, addition, division, until we get to that. But we are going to look at all types of operators, numerical operators, down in the series. So what have we done so far? In today's lesson, we introduced what variables are, that variables kind of container, if you want to look at it like that, that holds a value, and anytime you need the value back again, you need to call back that your container, and the value would definitely be in your hands. We'd automatically look at how to assign variables, which is using a quality sign to assign a value to a variable. And we also look at how Python processed variables, that if we decide to use mathematical operators in adding something like this, that we are not adding the variables itself, instead that we are indirectly calling the value they are carrying, and we are adding it, and we are grabbing the result. I want you to take some notes down on what are the correct ways of naming a variable, because we have some conventions in Python of how to name a variable. Point one is that variable names can have letters, they can have numbers, and they can have underscores. So whenever you are defining a variable name, whenever you are calling a variable name, your variable name can be a letter like this, your variable name can be number like this one, then like 90. Your variable name can have underscores inside, like you have seen me use here. Spaces are not allowed in variable names. What I mean by spaces are not allowed is, instead of you saying user, okay, user1 like this, and you assign a value to this, in fact, if you use this, Python is, for example, let's see, we say one user. If we do this and we try to print this user and 1, Python is going to throw us an error. Let's see, Control plus A5, as you can see here, is saying syntax error, invalid syntax. For you to even see that, Python won't even allow that to work. So it's a very bad thing for you to use spaces inside your variable. Never you keep spaces inside your variable when you're defining. If you have a long variable name, instead of that, use underscores like this for you to join your long variable names when you are defining. So the point 2 states that never you use spaces in your variable name when you are defining. Point 3, avoid using Python reserved or keyword and function name as variable names. So what do I mean by this? I know that you don't really know some of the Python reserved words yet, but as we are going, you just get to master some of these Python reserved words and some of these keyword. But one example is one that we have used right now, which is the print function. So imagine you want to define your variable name, and you are starting your variable name with print. Okay, print like this. Okay, immediately you write this, you see, it can be confusing. Sometimes maybe Python might ignore and just run your code, but automatically this can lead to a lot of errors, which can be very difficult for you to debug. So once you know a certain Python keyword or a reserved word, don't use that as your own variable names. 4, variable names should be short and descriptive. What does this mean? Okay, instead of you to say first name of a user, instead of you writing something like this, first name of a user, you can just make it short and just say first name like this. even if you are saying first name, it's still descriptive but it's short. So try to make your variable names to be short and kind of descriptive. Let them convey meaning to what you are trying to the value you are trying to hold. If you want to hold a value for username, you go ahead and use username as your variable name. So another point that we want to look at here is try to be careful when using lowercase letters like I and 1, because this can be confusing, and also lowercase of 0 and O. Okay, what do I mean by this? Okay, let me just show you something. You will discover that at some point you do mistake and just say something like IO like this, use it as your variable name. After using a mistakenly you'll be confused at some point and say, I don't know, was this I or 1? Automatically you just go ahead and use 1O like this. Automatically you have an error. So whenever you are defining a variable name, be careful with these letters, combination of I and 1, because they can be confusing, and also 0 and O like this, because they can be confusing. So another thing here that you want to take note when you are defining a variable name is that using all upper case letters to name variable won't give you error at all. But whenever you are using all uppercase letters like this, any Python programmer that is looking at this is going to think that you are trying to define a constant variable, that is a variable that is not supposed to change throughout the lifetime of a program. So avoid using these if you are not writing a constant variable. If you are defining a normal variable that can change, that you can interchange, go ahead and use all lower cases. Another thing that I want to also bring to your notice, as you are going to practice a lot of things about variables here, is that avoid name errors when using variables. Avoid name errors. In fact, to be sincere with you, as you are starting as a beginner with Python, this is one of the errors that you're likely to have. So what is the mistake? Alright, let's look at this. Okay, so let's say we define a variable called message, and this message here is holding a value called something like let's say good morning. Alright. Okay, so now, and whenever we want to call this this message, whenever you want to call the variable, we did a mistake here. Instead of, remember, this ace now is double ace for message, and let's say maybe we were typing very fast, and all of a sudden we just mistakenly, let's say, add 3 ace like this, and we say message, and we call this 3, like immediately we call this and we try to get the result in the output. I think I need to clear up my screen from here so you see the result clearly. Okay, alright, I'm clearing my screen, so let me run that again. Alright, you can see, so Python automatically throws you name error. It's telling you name message is not defined. So many of the times you are going to be seeing this error. Even as experienced programmer, we still keep having this error, we still keep seeing this error. But whenever we see this error, we just automatically know that there is a particular variable name in our code that is defined and we are not using it properly, or perhaps maybe it's not defined and we are trying to use that. So in this case, Python doesn't know that we did a mistake here. All what Python does is Python say, I'm looking at the message you have defined so far, or your own definition of message was double S, so I'm looking at the one that have double S all through your code. I can't find it, and why are you giving me triple S right now? I don't know, that one is not defined. You didn't mention it, you didn't define it at all. That's the reason you are having this name message is not defined, name error. So one of the ways you can fix it here is that, as you can see, if you look at where Python start tracing this error, it said trace back here. Now this trace back simply means this is where I'm starting to get the error as I'm running your code, which is on line 42. So automatically, if you look at line 42, indeed this is where Python start having the error. 42, we go to line 42 and it's telling us name error. Automatically say line 42, wow, we give it a name, message, you can call this anything. So, and it's telling us again in the next line, oh, message is not defined. So automatically we just look at this message we are calling is not defined. How come? Okay, we have message here and this doesn't correspond. So in order for us to fix this, we just remove one ace from here and click on Ctrl Ace and Ctrl plus F. Automatically you can see we have our result popping out in the output. So that is something I wanted to show you on how to fix some of these errors and the errors you're likely to have when you are starting to define variables. So I would really encourage you to just go ahead, play along with this thing, write a lot of variables, follow the guidelines, look at what we have studied so far on variables, and just skim through it and keep through it. And if you are crossing this particular video and you are not still sure why you should choose starting with Python, I really recommend you to check the other videos in my same channel. You will see videos that I really took time to explain different things that you can use Python to do in those videos. And if you are convinced that you really want to start learning Python, starting from this particular channel, I really recommend it for you, because I will be making sure that I go through everything step by steps and basics to make sure that you really understand everything about Python and what you are learning here, and in order for you to know it yourself. So with that being said, I'll see you in the next video. I hope you liked the video. Please subscribe to the channel and click that like button if you find this video useful. Turn on your post on notifications so that each time I post a new video like this, you'll be notified to always come check on it. Alright, so with that being said, I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.